Hi guys, I'm a forester here. This is the second in a series of videos that I'm making from these personal notes that I found in my father-in-law's belongings. The first video was about him enlisting in the Marines after the attack on Pearl Harbor. This video is going to be about his introduction to life at Parris Island. The next day we went to Parris Island, and that's when the confusion really started. At this moment, I cannot tell you how we got from Yamasee to Parris Island. The first thing I remember was someone telling us that we were not worth being Marines. We were the lowest form of life and not worth the ground we stood on. From that time on, for 3 months, we were like sheep following their shepherd. Our shepherds in this case were Sgt Grinder and Corporal Caruso. When they said jump, we didn't waste time to ask how high, we just started jumping. When they said eat, we ate. When they said sleep, we slept. When they said march, we marched, and it seemed like they were saying march with every breath. I bet I walked 20 miles every day without moving an inch. When we were trying to learn how to close order drill, it was scary. Of course, we couldn't scream or laugh without suffering some kind of punishment. Some of us didn't know our left from our right, and would we get tangled up? Corporal Caruso was determined that we were going to learn how to close order drill. By the way, it was 72 men in our platoon. He gave us the order to fix bayonets and then started drilling us. When he gave the order to the rear march and those bayonets started flying over your head, it didn't take you long to learn how to execute the command. Boot training was serious business, but there were times when you could relax and tell jokes for laughter, but not when Sgt Grinder was around. That man was the meanest human I had ever run into, I thought. When he was drilling the platoon and one of the recruits did something wrong, he would stop the drill, call that recruit out and give him a good tongue lashing and start hitting him on the helmet with his swagger stick. The helmet that we wore was the pith helmet, which I called something else. It had a headband in it that held the helmet a good half-inch from the head. From all appearance and sound, it appeared the sergeant was beating the recruit to pieces. After thinking about it a while, I realized the sergeant hadn't touched the recruit. It just sounded and looked that way. Now to get back to the laughter time. The smallest person in the platoon was less than 5 feet tall and might have weighed 100 pounds soaking wet, and the biggest person was a wrestler weighing 225 pounds. These two men got together and worked up a scheme to fool the rest of us. The big guy put a blanket down on the floor as if to do some exercise. The little fella comes over and complains about him taking up too much room and proceeds to take up the blanket. The wrestler slaps the little fella, and the little fella charged into the wrestler, grabbed him by the arm, and threw him over his shoulder. When the wrestler hit the floor, it sounded and felt like the whole barracks would collapse. It wasn't 10 seconds before Corporal Caruso was in our squad room to find out what had happened. What he found was these two jokers standing in the middle of the floor, with the wrestler putting on a crying fit and pointing to the little fella and telling the corporal that the little fella had been picking on him. The corporal threw up both hands and walked out of the room.